The sound that echoed through Denver Memorial's emergency room wasn't the usual beeping of heart monitors or the hiss of oxygen tanks. It was the wet thud of a 6'5", 240-pound man hitting the floor after being dropped by a single, precise strike from Ana Rodriguez. The 5'2" night nurse everyone called Mouse, because she spoke so softly that doctors had to lean in to hear her whispers. For 11 months, the staff had mocked her for being too shy to speak up during emergencies, never knowing that her quiet voice was the result of vocal cord damage from underwater explosions, and her trembling hands had once planted demolition charges on enemy vessels 2 miles beneath the ocean's surface. When 3 Navy helicopters landed 25 minutes later, the extraction team didn't ask for hospital administration or the police. They demanded one person. Where the hell is Deep Six? Hey everyone, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and make sure to hit that subscribe button because this story will leave you absolutely speechless. Ana Rodriguez had spent 11 months perfecting the art of being invisible at Denver Memorial Hospital. At barely over 5 feet tall, with dark hair that she kept pulled back in a severe bun, and brown eyes that seemed to hold secrets too dangerous to share, she moved through the emergency department like a shadow. The other nurses had nicknamed her Mouse because of the way she spoke in whispers so quiet that people had to strain to hear her, and because she had a habit of startling whenever anyone approached her unexpectedly. What they saw as social anxiety was actually the result of 4 years serving as a Navy SEAL underwater demolitions expert, where speaking too loudly could get your entire team killed, and being aware of your surroundings at all times was the difference between completing the mission and becoming fish food. Anna's whispered speech wasn't shyness. It was the aftermath of vocal cord damage from underwater explosions, and her hypervigilant startle response came from years of working in environments where the slightest sound could indicate incoming enemy fire. The woman they dismissed as too quiet for emergency medicine had actually been Chief Petty Officer Ana Rodriguez, call sign Deep Six, holder of 3 Navy Crosses, and the unofficial record for the deepest underwater demolition mission in SEAL team history. She had been declared killed in action 13 months ago during a classified operation in the South China Sea, her death carefully staged to protect her from the international arms dealers whose operations she had spent years systematically destroying from below the waterline. Every shift at Denver Memorial began the same way for Anna. She would arrive early, check the supply cabinets with the methodical precision of someone conducting pre-mission equipment checks, and spend her first hour reviewing patient charts with the kind of attention to detail that her former teammates would have recognized as tactical intelligence gathering. "Rodriguez, for crying out loud, speak up!" The sharp voice belonged to Dr. Kevin Marshall, the emergency department's chief resident, a man whose confidence in his own abilities was exceeded only by his impatience with anyone he perceived as incompetent. "Mrs. Chen in bed 12 is asking about her discharge instructions, and I can't understand a word you're saying." Anna looked up from the medication chart she had been reviewing, her dark eyes immediately dropping to avoid direct contact with Dr. Marshall's irritated glare. "I said her blood pressure is still elevated," she repeated, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the emergency department. "Maybe we should keep her for observation." "Her blood pressure is fine," Dr. Marshall snapped, stepping closer to loom over Anna's smaller frame. "And even if it wasn't, I don't need medical advice from a nurse who can't even speak loudly enough to be heard in an emergency. This is a trauma center, Rodriguez, not a monastery." Anna felt the familiar burn of humiliation, the same shame she had endured for nearly a year of being treated like a liability by people who had never faced real danger in their lives. "Yes, doctor. I'll discharge Mrs. Chen. And next time, save your medical opinions for someone who asked for them," Dr. Marshall added before stalking away to terrorize some other member of the nursing staff. Around the nurses' station, Anna caught the usual mixture of reactions from her colleagues. Sympathetic glances from the newer nurses, who remembered what it felt like to be bullied by attending physicians. Eye rolls from the more experienced staff, who had grown tired of watching her get dressed down on a regular basis. She knew what they were all thinking. Why didn't she stand up for herself? Why didn't she fight back? What they didn't understand was that Ana Rodriguez had already done enough fighting to last several lifetimes. Her whispered voice and submissive posture weren't signs of weakness. They were her attempt to create a life where conflict didn't end with someone dying in an explosion 2 miles below the surface of the ocean. Anna was completing Mrs. Chen's discharge paperwork when the emergency department's automatic doors slid open to admit someone who didn't belong in a medical facility. The man who walked through was enormous, easily 6 feet 5 inches, and built like a professional football player who had spent the off-season lifting heavy things for anger management. His clothes were disheveled, his face was unshaven, and his eyes held the kind of wild desperation that Anna recognized from her years of combat operations. But it was what he pulled from inside his jacket that made Anna's blood run cold. A Glock 19 pistol, military issue, held with the competent grip of someone who knew exactly how to use it. The man moved into the emergency department with purposeful strides, and Anna could see immediately that this wasn't random violence. This was someone with a specific mission, someone who had planned this moment carefully and was prepared to see it through regardless of the consequences. "Everyone stop what you're doing and listen to me," the man said, his voice carrying clearly across the department despite the fact that he wasn't shouting. There was something about his tone, controlled, measured, absolutely lethal, that made everyone freeze in place. "My name is Thomas Briggs. My father died in this hospital 6 days ago, and I want to talk to the people who murdered him." Dr. Marshall, who had been reviewing patient charts near the trauma bays, looked up with the kind of authoritative expression he used when dealing with difficult patients or incompetent staff. "Sir, you need to put that weapon down immediately. This is a hospital, and we don't tolerate—" "I know what this is," Briggs cut him off, raising the pistol so that it was clearly visible to everyone in the department. "This is the place where my father spent his last 8 hours begging for help, while you people ignored him because he didn't have the right kind of insurance." Anna felt her entire body tense, not with fear but with tactical assessment. She had encountered this scenario before, not in a hospital, but in villages throughout the Middle East, where grieving family members had been recruited by insurgents to carry out revenge attacks against American forces. The pattern was always the same: legitimate grief twisted into justification for violence, a desperate person pushed beyond their ability to think rationally. But there was something about Briggs that caught Anna's attention, something in his stance and weapon handling that suggested military training. He wasn't waving the gun around wildly or making amateur mistakes that would give someone an opportunity to disarm him. He was controlling the situation with the competence of someone who understood combat tactics. "Mr. Briggs," Dr. Marshall said, raising his hands in what he probably thought was a calming gesture. "I understand you're upset about your father. If you put the weapon down, we can discuss—" "We're not discussing anything," Briggs said firmly. "You people are going to listen while I tell you exactly what you did to Frank Briggs. How you left him sitting in the waiting room for 6 hours while he had a heart attack. How you told him it was just indigestion and sent him home to die. How you killed him because you couldn't be bothered to run a simple EKG." Anna's mind was racing, automatically cataloging details that her SEAL training had burned into her subconscious. Briggs was holding his weapon with proper grip and stance, military or law enforcement background. His positioning gave him clear sight lines to the entire emergency department, but he had positioned himself near the reception desk rather than the exits, which suggested he wasn't thinking about escape routes. This was someone who expected to die here tonight. Most importantly, His attention was focused entirely on Dr. Marshall and the other physicians. He was treating the nurses and support staff as non-threats, which meant Anna might be able to move without drawing his attention. "Security to the emergency department. Code Silver," someone was saying over the PA system. But Anna knew that Denver Memorial's security guards would be no match for an armed man with Briggs's size and apparent training. "Turn that off," Briggs barked, gesturing toward the nurses' station where someone had triggered the alert. "No security, no police, no negotiation. This is between me and the doctors who killed my father." Anna found herself moving almost without conscious thought, not away from the danger like everyone else, but toward a position where she could better assess the tactical situation. Her 11 months of playing the frightened, incompetent nurse had given her an intimate knowledge of the emergency department's layout. Every door, every piece of equipment that could provide cover, every angle that would allow for close-quarters combat. "You," Briggs said suddenly, pointing the pistol directly at Dr. Marshall. "You were the attending physician when my father was brought in. You looked at him for maybe 2 minutes and decided he was wasting your time." Dr. Marshall's face had gone pale, but Anna could see him trying to maintain his professional composure. "Mr. Briggs, I remember your father. We ran appropriate tests based on his presenting symptoms." "You ran nothing." Briggs's control cracked for a moment, revealing the raw grief underneath his anger. "You gave him some antacids and told him to see his family doctor. He died in his driveway 4 hours later because you were too arrogant to consider that a working-class man might actually be having a medical emergency." Anna felt a chill of recognition. Frank Briggs. She remembered the case. An older man who had come in complaining of chest discomfort and fatigue, symptoms that could have indicated anything from anxiety to heart attack to acid reflux. Dr. Marshall had indeed dismissed him quickly, attributing his symptoms to stress and poor diet without running the cardiac tests that might have revealed the massive heart attack that eventually killed him. It was the kind of medical negligence that happened more often than anyone wanted to admit. The kind of unconscious bias that led doctors to take some patients less seriously than others based on their appearance, their insurance status, or their ability to articulate their symptoms in medical terminology. But regardless of the legitimacy of Briggs's grievance, Anna couldn't allow him to resolve it through violence. Too many innocent people were in the line of fire, and she had sworn an oath, both as a SEAL and as a nurse, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "Mr. Briggs," Anna said softly, her voice barely carrying across the department. Briggs's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes scanning for the source. When his gaze found Anna, small, trembling, apparently harmless, his expression shifted to something almost like confusion. "What did you say?" Briggs asked. Anna took a careful step forward, her hands visibly shaking as she moved. To anyone watching, she looked like the most frightened person in the room. In reality, she was calculating distances, angles, and the precise movements that would be required to neutralize the threat without endangering the other people in the department. "I said I'm sorry for your loss," Anna repeated, her voice still barely above a whisper. "Your father was a good man. He deserved better than what happened to him." Briggs's grip on the pistol loosened slightly, and Anna could see confusion warring with rage in his expression. "You knew him?" "I was his nurse," Anna said, taking another small step forward. She was now close enough to see the details of Briggs's weapon grip, close enough to assess his exact positioning and stance. "I stayed with him as long as I could. He talked about you, about how proud he was of your service in Afghanistan." "Then you know why I'm here," Briggs said, but some of the edge was leaving his voice. "You know why these people have to pay for what they did." "I know you're hurting," Anna said, continuing her careful approach. She was now within 12 feet of Briggs, close enough to execute a takedown, but still far enough away that he might have time to react if she moved too quickly. "I know the system failed your father, And I know you feel like violence is the only way to make that right. But Frank wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want you to throw your life away on people who aren't worth it. Anna was now within 8 feet of Briggs, close enough to see the pain in his eyes, close enough to hear the slight tremor in his breathing that indicated someone fighting to maintain control. "You don't understand," Briggs said, his voice breaking slightly. "He was all I had left. My mom died when I was 12, and he raised me by himself. Worked 2 jobs to put me through college, supported me through 3 tours overseas. These people took the only family I had." "I do understand," Anna said, and for the first time since arriving at Denver Memorial, she allowed some of her real self to show through the facade. "I understand what it's like to lose someone you love because other people failed to do their job. I understand what it's like to want revenge so badly it feels like it's burning you alive from the inside." Briggs's eyes narrowed as he studied Anna more carefully. Something in her tone, in the way she was carrying herself, had changed. The trembling nurse was still there, but underneath it was something else, something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "Who are you?" Briggs asked. Anna smiled sadly. "I'm someone who learned that revenge doesn't bring them back. It just creates more ghosts to haunt you." She moved then, covering the final 8 feet between them faster than most people would have believed possible for someone her size. But Ana Rodriguez hadn't survived 4 years as a Navy SEAL by being slow or hesitant when the moment for action arrived. Briggs started to raise his pistol, but Anna was already inside his reach. Her left hand struck his wrist with surgical precision, causing his grip to loosen and the barrel to swing away from any potential targets. Simultaneously, her right hand drove upward into the cluster of nerves just below his sternum, a strike that would temporarily disable his breathing and balance. Briggs staggered backward, gasping for air, but Anna wasn't finished. She followed up with a precise strike to the carotid artery in his neck, cutting off blood flow to his brain for just long enough to send him into unconsciousness without causing permanent damage. The entire encounter lasted less than 4 seconds. One moment Briggs was in control of the situation with a loaded pistol. The next he was lying unconscious on the floor, while Anna calmly secured his weapon. The emergency department was dead silent, everyone staring at the small, whispering nurse who had just taken down a man twice her size with what looked like effortless precision. Dr. Marshall was the first to find his voice. "Rodriguez, how did you—" "What just happened?" Anna looked down at Briggs's unconscious form, checking his pulse and breathing to make sure she hadn't caused any serious injury. "I neutralized the threat," she said simply, her voice still barely above a whisper. "You're a nurse," Dr. Marshall said weakly. "Where did you learn to do that?" Anna stood up, Briggs's pistol secured safely in her hands with the kind of weapon handling that spoke of extensive military training. For a moment, she seemed to be considering how to answer. Then she simply said, "I had a different job before this one." The sound of approaching helicopters began to echo through the emergency department, a deep thumping that was growing rapidly louder. Anna's head snapped up immediately. Not with the startled reaction of someone surprised by unexpected noise, but with the instant alertness of someone who recognized military aircraft. "3 birds," she murmured to herself. "Navy configuration. Probably MH-60 Seahawks." Dr. Marshall stared at her. "How could you possibly know that?" Anna didn't answer. She was too busy listening to the sound patterns, identifying the number of aircraft and their probable mission configuration based on auditory signatures that most civilians would never be able to distinguish. The landing was not subtle. 3 Navy helicopters touched down simultaneously in the hospital's main parking lot, their rotor wash sending debris flying in all directions and setting off car alarms throughout the area. The aircraft weren't medical evacuation birds. They were combat transports, carrying personnel who had come equipped for a military extraction operation. The emergency department's automatic doors were forced open, and naval special warfare operators in full combat gear poured through the entrance. They moved with the fluid precision of elite soldiers, weapons at the ready, scanning for threats with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. The lead operator, a grizzled master chief with the kind of weathered face that had seen combat in multiple theaters, spotted Anna immediately. He approached her with his weapon lowered but ready, his eyes taking in the scene: the unconscious Briggs, the secured pistol, the terrified hospital staff. "Deep Six?" he asked simply. Anna straightened to attention, 11 months of playing weak and frightened falling away like a discarded costume. "Present, Master Chief." "Rodriguez, we've been looking for you for 13 months. Command thought you were dead until your face showed up on hospital security footage, taking down an armed hostile." Anna glanced around the emergency department, looking at the faces of people she had worked alongside for nearly a year. People who were now staring at her like they had never seen her before. "Extract me?" Anna asked. "I'm not going anywhere. I have patients to take care of." The Master Chief's expression softened slightly. "Ma'am, with respect, your cover was blown the moment you engaged that hostile. The arms dealers who think you're dead are going to figure out otherwise pretty quickly. And when they do, everyone in this hospital becomes a potential target." Anna felt the weight of that truth settling over her. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she had hoped for more time to figure out how to balance her old life with her new one. "What about him?" Anna asked, gesturing toward Briggs. "He's going to be fine," the Master Chief assured her. "Clean takedown, textbook application of non-lethal force. He'll wake up in federal custody, but he's not seriously injured. You did good work." Anna nodded, then turned to Dr. Marshall. The man who had spent 11 months belittling her was now looking at her with something approaching awe. "Kevin," Anna said, using Dr. Marshall's first name for the first time. "Thomas Briggs was right about one thing. His father died because of medical negligence. Not malice, but negligence. You might want to think about that the next time someone doesn't fit your idea of what a heart attack patient looks like." Dr. Marshall's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Deep Six," the Master Chief said gently. "We need to go. The longer we stay here, the more attention we draw to this facility." Anna Rodriguez, also known as Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, also known as Deep Six, took one last look around the emergency department that had been her sanctuary for 11 months. She had come here trying to escape from violence, but violence had found her anyway. "I need 5 minutes to change out of these scrubs," she said finally. "Ma'am, we brought your gear," the Master Chief replied, indicating a tactical bag carried by one of the other operators. Anna smiled for the first time in months. Not the hesitant, apologetic expression she had worn as Mouse, but the confident grin of someone who was finally comfortable in her own skin again. "In that case, let's go home." As Anna walked toward the waiting helicopters, one of the younger nurses called after her. "Anna, your voice. You're not whispering anymore." Anna paused at the threshold of the emergency department, looking back over her shoulder. "I was never whispering from fear," she said, her voice now carrying the clear, confident tone of a military officer. "I was whispering because I was trying so hard not to be what I really am." The mouse had never been timid. She had been the most lethal predator in the room, carefully disguising herself as prey. Outside, as Anna climbed into the lead helicopter, a Navy captain was waiting with a mixture of relief and urgency on his weathered face. 13 months, Chief," he said as the aircraft lifted off. 13 months of thinking you were dead while you played nurse." "It wasn't playing, sir," Anna replied, settling into her seat and accepting the tactical gear that would transform her back into Deep Six. Those people save lives every day. That's not something to dismiss lightly. Maybe not, the captain conceded. But we have a situation in the Pacific that requires your particular skill set. The arms dealers who tried to kill you last year are back in business, and they're operating out of a floating compound that conventional forces can't touch. Anna nodded as she began changing into her combat gear. The hands that had trembled while holding coffee cups were now steady as steel as she handled her underwater demolition equipment with practiced familiarity. "How deep?" she asked. 200 feet down, heavily fortified, surrounded by underwater mines. We need someone who can approach from below, plant charges on the support structures, and get out before the whole thing comes down. Anna looked out the helicopter's window as Denver fell away beneath them. Somewhere down there, the staff at Denver Memorial was probably still trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. The frightened nurse they had pitied was actually one of the most dangerous underwater operators in the Navy. But Anna knew something they didn't. Being deadly and being caring weren't mutually exclusive. The same hands that could plant explosives on enemy vessels could also comfort dying patients and start IVs with gentle precision. She would complete this mission, eliminate the threats that had forced her into hiding, and then make a choice about what kind of person she wanted to be going forward. But whatever she decided, she would never again pretend to be smaller than she was. Deep Six was going back to war. But she was carrying something new with her. The knowledge that strength could be expressed through healing as well as violence. And that sometimes the greatest courage was found not in taking lives, but in saving them. The depths were calling, and Ana Rodriguez was ready to answer.